It is 2:47 in the morning on March 5th, 2026, and I am sitting here at my kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, my hands still trembling, my face still wet from tears. I didn't even realize I was crying. I have been awake for hours, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I was shown something so heavy, so real, so overwhelming, that I genuinely don't know how to carry it alone anymore. And I tried. I really tried to tell myself to wait until morning. I told myself nobody wants to hear this at 3 in the morning. I told myself people would think I was out of my mind. I told myself maybe I misunderstood what I saw. Maybe I'm still processing it wrong. Maybe I should pray more before I open my mouth. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. And every time I tried to set it down and go back to bed, I felt this weight pressing on my chest like a hand, like a voice, saying you cannot stay silent. Not about this, not tonight. This cannot wait. So here I am. 2:47 in the morning. I am not polished. I am not prepared, but I am present, and I need you to hear this. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge something. Some of you are going to be skeptical about what I'm about to share, and you know what? I understand that. I would be too. I've been skeptical of things like this before. I've watched people share experiences and thought to myself, how do you really know? How do you know you're not just processing something emotionally and dressing it up in spiritual language? I've thought that. And so I'm not asking you to turn off your critical thinking. I'm not asking you to believe me uncritically. I'm asking you to hold the question open long enough to hear the whole thing, because what I was shown was not vague. It was not impressionistic. It was specific and sequential, and it landed with a weight and a clarity that I have never experienced before in my life. And the reason I'm here at 2:47 in the morning telling you about it instead of sleeping is not because I had a vivid dream that faded when I woke up. It's because every time I close my eyes, it's still there, just as clear as when it happened. And something in me knows that clarity is not for me alone. I don't know exactly why you clicked on this. Maybe it was the title. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe something in you felt pulled in a direction you can't fully explain, and you followed it here at whatever time it is in your life right now. But I want you to know, I don't think it was an accident. I believe with everything in me that the people who are meant to hear what I'm about to share have already found their way here. You might be in a season of serious questioning. You might be carrying someone you love in your heart right now, someone who doesn't believe, someone who walked away a long time ago, someone you've been praying for and not seeing any movement, someone who is hostile to the very idea of faith, someone who has never been given a real reason to consider it at all. And if any of that describes you or someone in your life, I need you to stay with me through this entire thing. Don't skip around. Don't check out after a few minutes. Because what I'm about to share is going to break something open inside you. And maybe, just maybe, that breaking open is exactly what you and the people you love have been waiting for. I want you to also know that I almost didn't share this. I sat here for a long time arguing with myself about it, about whether it was real, about whether I was the right person, about whether the timing was right. And every time I thought I'd talked myself out of it, the weight came back. The same pressing I described from 3 weeks ago, but concentrated, like the message itself refusing to stay inside. And finally I stopped arguing, and I opened my phone. And here we are. I have to be honest with you about something before I start. This is not a comfortable message. I'm not going to tell you everything is fine and everyone ends up okay, and love wins in the way that phrase gets used to mean nobody faces real consequences. I am not going to smooth over what I saw with pretty words that feel good, but don't carry any real weight. But I am going to tell you the full truth, all of it, including the part that absolutely broke my heart, including the part that made Jesus himself weep in a way I have never witnessed and hope never to witness again in my life. And I'm going to tell you what he told me to tell you, because when I asked him if I should share this, he didn't hesitate. He said, they need to hear this now, not eventually, now, so I'm here. Please, if you're driving, find somewhere to pull over. If you're distracted, put the other thing down and just listen. If you're someone who doesn't usually take things like this seriously, I am genuinely asking you to give me a few minutes, just this once, because I believe with everything I have that this message was placed in front of you for a specific reason, and the worst thing that could happen is you hear it and decide I'm wrong and move on with your life. But the other possibility is that something in what I share tonight is exactly what you needed to hear, and I'd rather risk sounding foolish than let that possibility pass. I want to tell you how this all started because the context matters. About 3 weeks ago, I began experiencing what I can only describe as a pressing, this ongoing sense of urgency that I couldn't shake, that followed me through my days, that woke me up at night, that settled over ordinary moments, like a weight. Not fear exactly, more like the feeling you get when you know something important is coming and you don't know whether you're ready, but you know you need to be. I started spending more time in prayer and more time in silence. I told my family I needed some space, some room to process whatever was building. I didn't fully understand what was happening yet. I just knew that something was, and that I needed to be still enough to receive it. Then 7 nights ago, on a Sunday, I had an experience that I have been trying to find adequate language for ever since. I had gone outside late in the evening. It was bitterly cold. There was deep snow on the ground and heavy snow loaded into the branches of the trees around the property, and everything was completely still in the way that deep cold makes everything still, the kind of quiet that feels deliberate, like the world is holding its breath. And I stood out there looking up at the sky, and I felt small in a way that wasn't unpleasant, just true. And then the sky began to do something I had never seen before in my part of the world. The aurora borealis had come. Not faint wisps, the way you sometimes see in photographs or in someone else's video. Full moving curtains of light, green and violet and white shifting and breathing and folding into each other, stretching all the way across the mountain sky above the snow-covered trees like something alive. Like the sky itself was breathing, and I stood there with my breath making small clouds in the frozen air, and I looked up at that light and I said out loud, to no one and everyone, God, if you're real, if any of this is real, if any of what I believe is actually true, show me something true tonight. And that's when everything changed. The lights seemed to slow, and then they seemed to gather, to concentrate, to pull toward the space directly above me in a way that had no meteorological explanation I could offer. And I felt a warmth that had absolutely no business being there in that frozen air, a warmth that started somewhere in the center of my chest and moved outward into my hands, into my face, down my arms, and I heard a voice, not with my ears, with my whole body, the way you feel a deep note from a large instrument, calm and unhurried and carrying a weight of love I cannot adequately describe. And the voice said, I am here, and I knew. The knowing was not intellectual. It wasn't a conclusion I reached. It was a recognition. I knew the way you know your own name. This was real. This was him. He stood with me under those lights. I couldn't see a physical form exactly. I couldn't point to a shape or describe features the way someone describes a person they passed on the street. But I felt presence the way you feel another person in the room with you. Weight, reality, the unmistakable sense of being seen by someone who actually sees you. And the aurora kept moving above us in a way that felt like it was marking the moment. Like heaven itself had lit up to witness what was about to happen. And I said, shaking now, I said, why are you here? What do you want me to know? And he said, I want to show you something. I want to show you what grieves me. And then I want you to tell them. And I need you to understand what it felt like to hear that, because when he said tell them, I felt the word them like a weight. Not an abstract audience, real people, specific people, the people who are going to watch this and the people they're going to think of while they're watching it. The message was never just for me, it was always passing through me toward someone else, and the urgency of that, the specific directedness of it, is why I can't sit on this. He showed me 7 things, 7 specific things, one after another, building on each other the way a complete picture builds out of its individual parts. I'm going to share all 7 with you now. I'm going to hold nothing back. But I need you to know up front that the 7th thing, the final thing he showed me, is the thing that undid me. It's the thing that has me sitting here at 2:47 in the morning, unable to close my eyes without seeing it again. I'll get there. I promise I'll get there. But you need everything that comes before it to understand why it hit the way it did. So stay with me, all the way through. Don't skip to the end. It won't land the same way if you skip. The first thing he showed me was a door, not a metaphor, not a symbol floating in abstract space. A real door, wooden, weathered, old in the way things that have existed a very long time are old, standing alone in open space under that aurora sky with nothing attached to it on either side. Just the door, freestanding, real, and I knew, the way you know things in moments like this, that this door represented a threshold, a crossing point, the moment between this life and what comes after it, the moment every person who has ever drawn a breath will eventually reach. And he said every person who has ever lived walks through a door like this, every single one, without exception. The question, he said, and he said it quietly and without performance, the question I want you to sit with is not whether the door exists. Everyone walks through the door. The question is what is on the other side for each person. And he stood with me in the silence that followed that and let me feel the weight of it. I stood there looking at that door, and I felt the full reality of what he'd said pressing in on me. Every person, every human being who has ever existed, every parent and child, every old person who lived a full life and every young person taken too soon, every kind stranger and every difficult one, every person you passed today who you'll never know the name of, every person sitting in a hospital somewhere tonight, every person laughing with friends right now who has no idea this is coming for them too, all of them, walking through. And I started to tremble, and not because of the cold. He said, the door does not open differently for kind people than for unkind ones. It does not consider how much you gave to charity, or how many people you helped, or how good your intentions were. It does not weigh the amount of harm you avoided against the good you accomplished. It opens the same way for everyone. What matters, he said, is what has been settled, what has been resolved between you and me before you reach it, because the only thing that goes through that door with you is what was decided here. That's the first thing. And he gave me time to sit with it, and I'm giving you time to sit with it now before we go on. The second thing he showed me was a field, enormous, wide and open, stretching further in every direction than I could see, and in that field there were people, countless people, more than I could begin to number, standing, moving, milling, some in groups and some alone. And I noticed something immediately. They were separated, not by walls, not by anything physical keeping them apart. They were simply in different places in that field, drawn there by something in themselves, by the direction they'd been facing for the years of their lives. And some of them were moving, slowly but clearly, toward a light in the far distance, a warm, golden, living light that pulsed with the quality of a heartbeat, that called without sound, that drew without forcing, and some of them had their backs to that light and were standing very still, or moving away from it, as if it wasn't there, or as if they'd decided it wasn't relevant to them. And some were looking toward the light with their eyes, but standing with their feet pointed in the other direction, uncertain, pulled, not yet moved. And he said to me, this is the moment, this is the season you're in right now. The field is still full, people are still in it. And he said, you see the ones facing away? And I said, I see them. And he said, many of them were never told. Many of them were never genuinely shown. Not because I didn't love them, not because I gave up on them, but because the people I sent to tell them were afraid, or too busy, or too comfortable, or too concerned about how it would be received. And when he said that, something shifted in my chest in a way I can only describe as a blade, because I knew he wasn't only talking about other people, he was talking about me. I thought about every conversation I had ever found a way to sidestep. Every time I felt that familiar nudge and decided to ignore it. Every time I told myself it wasn't the right moment, or they won't want to hear it, or I don't want to make things weird, or they know what I believe, they can come to me if they want to talk about it. And I understood in that moment, standing in that field under those lights, what those decisions had actually cost. Not just me, other people, people whose faces I might never know. But I also want to say something to those of you who have tried, who have had the conversations and seen them go nowhere, who have shown up and been met with hostility or indifference or a door closing in your face, because I don't want you to walk away from this feeling like you failed. What he showed me was not that success is guaranteed. He showed me that presence is required. Those are different things. The outcome is not always yours to control. The showing up is. And sometimes showing up doesn't look like a dramatic conversion in the moment. Sometimes it looks like planting something. Sometimes it looks like being the third or fourth person in a chain of people who each contributed something to a journey that eventually leads to the door. And you may never know your place in that chain, but the chain is real, and your link in it matters. And he said, I'm not showing you this to condemn you. I'm not here to pile guilt on what's already heavy. I'm showing you this because there is still time. The field is still full. The door has not closed. And I need you to understand the real weight of the next few minutes, because what you do with what I'm about to show you actually matters more than you know. The third thing he showed me was a face, one specific person, not someone I recognized, a man, maybe late 40s, maybe a little older, with the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes and doesn't respond to sleep, the kind of tired that comes from carrying an unresolved ache for a very long time. And I felt something radiating from him that I can only call longing, deep and unmet and habituated, the way you get used to a pain you've had for so long you don't notice it until someone touches it, like a person who has been hungry for years and has almost forgotten what full feels like. And I asked, who is this? And he said, this is someone who spent their entire life one conversation away from coming home. One real conversation, one person willing to sit down in the middle of the mess with them and say, I know this looks complicated. I know you have questions I might not be able to answer, but let me tell you what I know to be true. And I said, "What happened?" And he looked at me with those eyes that hold everything without flinching, and he said, "No one sat down." I wept. I want to be honest with you about that. I didn't manage some composed, dignified response. I stood in the cold with tears running down my face because I understood what had just been shown to me. That man wasn't a symbol. He wasn't a warning label. He was a real person with a real name and people who loved him, and moments in his life when he was right on the edge of yes. Moments when the reaching was real and the longing was right there on the surface, and the reaching never connected with anything because no one showed up with the thing that would have made it real. And I want to sit here for a moment because I think some of you need this part specifically. Some of you have been telling yourself for a long time that the people in your life who don't believe just aren't interested, that you've tried before and it didn't go anywhere, that they push back too hard or they shut down the conversation or they make it uncomfortable. And I want to say something gently but clearly. Pushback is not the same as no. Shutting down a conversation is not the same as a final answer. People shut down conversations about things they're actually thinking about more than anything else. The defensiveness is often a signal of proximity, not distance. The people who are truly indifferent don't usually argue, they just change the subject and move on. The ones who argue are often the ones who are still in the field, still circling, still not finished. And what they need is not someone who backs away the moment it gets uncomfortable. What they need is someone who stays. He said, "I want you to think about the person in your life who looks like that man. The tired eyes, the unmet longing underneath the surface that comes out sideways sometimes as cynicism or anger or dismissal. The one you've been meaning to have a real conversation with for months or years. The one you pray for and then don't move toward because you don't know what you'd say. I'm not asking you to have all the answers," he said. "I'm not asking you to fix them or convince them or win a theological argument. I'm asking you to show up, because showing up changes things in ways that cannot be calculated in advance." The fourth thing he showed me, and this one was harder to watch, was a moment of decision. Not the moment at the door, the moment before it. The quiet, unremarkable moment that actually matters as much as any dramatic one. What I saw was like watching a scene from inside a life. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, sitting alone in an apartment somewhere, late at night with the particular silence of someone who has been thinking for a long time. And there was something in front of her in the scene, something I understood as the turning she'd been circling for a while. A question she kept coming back to. A door of her own that kept appearing and that she kept walking past. And you could feel, standing there watching, that she was close, right on the edge of something real, the way you feel heat from a fire before you see the flame. She was right there, and then her phone lit up. And the pull of the ordinary world was stronger in that particular moment than the pull of the thing she'd been reaching toward. And she looked at the screen and came back into the surface of her life. And the moment passed, and she set down what she'd been almost holding, and she went to bed. And I watched it happen, and I felt something in me that was grief and urgency and something close to desperation all at once. And he said, "This is what grieves me. Not the ones who have considered the question fully and said a clear no. Not even them, because I keep reaching even for them. But the ones who keep almost. The ones who live at the edge of yes their whole lives and never cross over, not because they decided against me, but because the moment kept getting interrupted and they never built the momentum to come back to it." And he said, "I never stop reaching for them, but I will not override the will I gave them. I will not force the door open. I will not remove the choice." He said every almost moment was a real moment, every single one, and every one of those moments still has the potential to become a yes if someone will help hold it open long enough for them to step through. That's why I need you to tell them. Not because I've given up, but because sometimes a voice from outside breaks through where silence from inside couldn't. I need you to hear that. He has not given up on the people you're thinking about right now, not remotely. The fifth thing he showed me was a comparison. Two people. Same general age, similar life circumstances, similar kinds of difficulty and loss and confusion. One had said yes to him years ago, and it hadn't been a clean or easy path. There had been real loss and genuine confusion and seasons when the faith felt less like a rope and more like a barely visible thread, seasons of doubt, seasons of distance, but the thread had held, and I watched this person move through hard things with something underneath the hardness, a foundation that bent in the wind but didn't give way. And when the door came for this person, I watched something happen that I don't have words adequate to describe, a recognition, the way you recognize home after a very long time away, not the end of a life, but the arrival at what the life had been building toward, something being completed rather than something being lost. And then I watched the second person, who had spent the same number of years with more ease in some ways, more comfort, more success by the measures that get counted, who had been genuinely kind in many moments, generous with time and resources, who had done more visible good by the world's accounting, but who had never resolved the question, who had always kept it at arm's length, who had always said, not yet, maybe when I have more time to think about it, when things settle down a little, when I'm at a different place in life. And when the door came for this person, I watched something I cannot fully put language to, not punishment in the dramatic sense the word often conjures, but absence. A vast, terrible, hollow absence of the thing that had been available to this person every day of their life. An absence that wasn't new. It was familiar. It was the same hollow ache that had been there underneath the busy years and the good works and the achievements, just with nothing left to fill it with, and nothing left to distract from it. And he said, and his voice carried everything when he said this, I do not want that for anyone. He said it the way a father says something after watching a child make the choice he begged them not to make. I do not want that for a single person in that field. And then he said, this is what I need you to understand about the people who don't believe. It is not that they are worse. It is not that they are less loved. It is that something was never made fully real to them, or it was offered poorly, or they were wounded by someone who claimed my name and behaved contrary to everything I am. And I have felt every one of those wounds, every single one. I have grieved over every distortion and every harm done in my name. And I am still reaching, through moments of beauty they can't explain, through dreams, through the persistent longing they keep misidentifying, through people like you if you'll go. And I want to stay here for a moment because I think this part matters for a lot of people watching tonight. There are people watching who have someone in their life who is not just indifferent but actively opposed. Someone who was hurt by the church. Someone who was damaged by a person who used religious language to control or wound or diminish them. Someone who has constructed a whole framework of understanding around the absence of God, because letting that framework go would mean reopening something that cost them enormously to close. And if that's the person you're carrying in your heart right now, I want you to hear what he said. He sees every wound. He sees every distortion. He grieves every harm done in his name by people who were not reflecting him accurately, and his reaching toward that person is not oblivious to what was done in his name. It carries full awareness. It is reaching through the wound, not around it. And what that person may need from you is not an argument about why what happened was an exception, or why the institution is still worth trusting, or why they should give it another chance. What they may need is someone who doesn't try to argue the wound away at all. Someone who just sits with them in it and says, what happened to you was real and it was wrong, and the one whose name was used that way is not who they made him out to be. Let me tell you who he actually is. That conversation, he said, can open something that nothing else could open, because what wounded people often need is not correct information. It's someone willing to be present with them in the place where the wound lives. The sixth thing he showed me was time, not as a dramatic countdown, not as a scare tactic, but as a simple, real, weight-bearing truth. He showed me the shortness of it, the way a season of possibility in a human life is genuine but not unlimited. He showed me how quickly a life moves when you're standing outside of it and watching, the way you can watch water moving when you're standing still on the bank. And he said, this is not meant to frighten you. This is meant to wake you up, because love that understands the timeline acts differently than love that assumes there is always more time. Love that knows acts. And I want to say something about that before I go further, because I know there are people watching this who have a theology that says everyone gets a chance, that there's always more time, that love would never truly close a door on anyone. And I am not here to have a theological argument tonight. I'm not here to declare one position over another on every nuance of what comes after. What I'm here to tell you is what I was shown. And what I was shown is that the window is real. The field has an endpoint. The door comes for every person. And the difference between having something settled and having it not settled when you reach that door is not a small difference. It is not a difference that gets smoothed over at the last moment by good intentions. It is the difference that the whole thing hinges on. And I'm not telling you that to produce fear. I'm telling you that because urgency is appropriate when the stakes are real, and the stakes are real. He showed me something specific. He showed me someone, and I won't describe the details in a way that identifies anyone, but I recognize something in the situation, something that felt relevant to right now, and he said, there are people watching this message tonight who have someone like this in their life, someone who is in the last open season, not because I've given up on them, but because the body has limits and the window is not permanent, and he said they need to move. The person watching right now who knows exactly who I mean, they need to move toward that conversation tonight, not next week, not after things settle down at work. Tonight. He said, "Tell them. I am telling them through you. For some of the people watching, tonight is the night. Please hear that. If something in you just clenched when I said that, if a name came to your mind, that's not a coincidence. Don't set it down." And then he brought me to the seventh thing. The final thing. The thing I told you would break your heart. And I want to approach this carefully because I want to say it exactly right. He wept. And I need you to understand what I mean by that. I don't mean there was a vague atmosphere of sadness. I don't mean it was a spiritual impression of sorrow. I mean that under those lights, in that frozen open space, the presence I had been standing with, the voice that had been showing me these things, wept, and the weeping was not restrained. It was not quiet. It was the grief of love, without limit meeting loss that should not have been, the grief of a father for children who didn't come home. And when it happened, I didn't stay standing. I went to my knees in the snow because it was the only response I had. And through the grief, he spoke. And what he said is the thing I was sent here to tell you. This is the center of everything. This is why I can't sleep. He said, "They think I am keeping a record of everything they've done wrong. They have been told I am waiting to condemn, looking for reasons to turn them away. They have been given an image of me that looks like an authority figure who can't be pleased and doesn't want to be approached, and this breaks me, because I have been running toward them their whole lives. I set the beauty in the sky as a reminder that I exist, and that existence is not empty. I put the longing in their chest, the one they keep trying to fill with other things, and the longing is mine. It is the shape of me in them. It is their nature calling for its source. I have whispered to them in their lowest moments. I have been the warmth and unexpected kindness they received from strangers. I have been in every moment of beauty that stopped them for a second and made them wonder. Every moment of that kind, he said, was me reaching, and the door I built was built to open, not to keep people out, to bring them in. But I will not take from them the freedom I gave them. I will not force it. All I can do is reach and grieve when the reaching isn't met, and send people like you to tell them the truth before the door reaches them first. And then he said the thing that completely undid me, the thing I didn't expect, the thing that hit like nothing I've ever felt in my life. He said, "Tell them I miss them." Not tell them they'd better get their act together. Not tell them they're running out of time so they should be afraid. Not tell them I've been watching and I've been keeping track. He said, "Tell them I miss them." Tell them it was never about the rules. It was always about the relationship. Tell them the version of me they've been afraid of or angry at or running from is not who I am. Tell them the love they've been looking for their entire lives is the very thing they've been running from because they didn't know that's what it was. Tell them there is still a door, and it is still open, and it opens from this side, and all they have to do is come. And I need to stay here for a moment because I don't want to rush past this. I want you to actually feel what that means. Because most of us, whether we've grown up in religious environments or outside of them, carry a version of this story where the central emotion on God's side is something between judgment and disappointment, a stern waiting, a record keeping, a patience that is really just tolerance before consequences. And that version of the story makes people afraid to approach. It makes people feel like the distance is safer than the intimacy. It makes people feel like maybe it's better not to open the question fully because what's on the other side might be condemnation. But what I was shown under those lights was not a judge waiting. What I was shown was a father who has been running toward his children their whole lives, who put longing in them as a homing signal, who set beauty in the world as a constant reminder, who whispered into their worst moments, who has been present in every moment of unexpected grace they ever received, credited to luck or coincidence or just a good day, all of it reaching, all of it the same voice saying, "Come home, come home, come home," and weeping when the reaching didn't land, weeping for real, the kind of weeping I witnessed under those lights that drove me to my knees in the snow. He misses them. That's the word. He misses them. And if you are one of the people who has been holding this at arm's length, if you're one of the ones who has been almost-ing, I need you to know that the one who has been reaching for you all this time is not sitting in judgment of the years you've spent away. He's been running toward you, and he's still running, and all it takes is you turning to meet him. I'm sitting here at this table and my hands are still not steady, and I need you to know that whoever needed to hear that tonight, I believe they're watching. I believe you found this for a reason. And if you have been the person in the field facing away from the light, if you have been the one almosting for years, if you have been keeping the question at a safe distance because you're afraid of what it would require of you, or what it would cost you, or what it would mean about the years you've already lived without it, I want you to hear this directly. He misses you, not the version of you that has it all figured out, not a polished or sorted version, the actual you, right now, exactly as you are in this moment. And if you have someone in your life who is in that field, I'm talking to you now, please. Please don't let another week go by without having the conversation you've been finding reasons to avoid. You do not have to have the perfect words. You do not have to have all the theological answers lined up. You do not have to feel ready. You just have to show up with honesty and love and let him work through your imperfect presence the way he has always worked through imperfect people. Because here is something I think we often get backwards. We think we need to be ready before we show up. We think we need to have the right thing to say before we open our mouth. And so we wait until we're ready, and ready never quite comes. And another month passes, and another year, and the person in the field keeps standing there while we're at home preparing for a conversation we never have. The preparation that matters is not having the right speech, it's having a willing heart. It's showing up with the genuine love for that person that you already have and letting that love make you brave enough to say, I care about you and there's something I want to talk to you about. That's the opening. That's the door from your side. You walk through yours and trust him to work on the other side. Let me tell you what I need you to do practically. Right now, not eventually. If there is any unresolved question between you and him, any turning you've been circling, any almost you've been living in, I need you to deal with it now. Not after you finish this. Not before bed. Now. And you can say it as simply as this. You don't need a practiced speech. You can say, God, I don't fully know how to do this. I don't have all my questions answered, but I want to come home. I want whatever is on the other side of that door when it opens for me to be you. Forgive me for everything that needs forgiving. I choose you. I'm done holding this at arm's length. That is the whole first step. Everything else grows from there. The understanding deepens over time. The questions find their answers in the living of it, but the first move is just the yes. And the yes doesn't require you to have everything figured out first. It just requires the willingness to step toward the door while it's still in front of you. If you've already said yes, if you're already in the path, then the first thing you need to do after this is write down one name, one specific person whose face came to your mind tonight during any part of what I've been sharing. And tomorrow morning, not next week, tomorrow morning, you contact them, not with a prepared speech, not with a list of points you want to make, just, hey, I've been thinking about you. I'd love to catch up. Can we find some time? That is how the field changes. One person, one conversation, one person willing to show up when the moment comes. Second thing I need you to do is start praying every morning to be used. Not just to believe the right things, not just to get your own house in order, though that matters, but to be actively used. Ask him to open your eyes to the conversations he's already placed in front of you that you've been too busy to notice. Ask him to give you courage when you feel the nudge and your instinct is to talk yourself out of it. Ask him to make you the kind of person that someone in an almost moment runs toward rather than away from, because the person in the almost moment needs a real person, not a perfect person, a real one who will sit down. And third, let this break your heart a little. I know that sounds like an uncomfortable thing to ask for, but what I saw tonight under those lights broke mine. And I think that's exactly what he intended, because a heart that has been broken open by what breaks him is a heart that will move when it needs to move. A heart that stays comfortable and insulated will stay comfortable and insulated, and the field will stay exactly as full as it is right now. Let the weight of this in. Let it be heavy for a little while, not heavy enough to crush you, heavy enough to propel you. Because the discomfort you feel right now, if you're feeling it, is not condemnation. It's not guilt in the punishing sense. It's love making itself real enough in you to actually produce movement. And movement is what the field needs. Movement is what the people still in it need. Not from a perfect, prepared, fully equipped version of you, from the real version. The version that was up too late tonight listening to someone share something at 2:47 in the morning and felt something land that they couldn't set back down. I want to close by praying with you. Right now, not as a formality, as a real thing. If you're willing to stay with me for just one more minute, I want us to say this together, wherever you are, and I mean together, not you watching me pray. Both of us right now, in whatever space you're in. God, I want to be someone you can use. I want to be brave enough to have the conversations I've been avoiding. I want to care enough about the people in the field to move toward them instead of staying comfortable. Break my heart for the ones who are almost but not yet. Give me presence when I show up, even if I don't have the right words. And for anyone watching right now who is still in the field, still circling the question, still carrying the unmet longing without knowing what it is, meet them in this moment. Let something in what they heard tonight land in the place that's been waiting for it. Open the door wide and make it real for them, because you miss them, and they need to know that. They need to know it's not condemnation waiting for them. It's you, in your name. It is 4:12 in the morning now, and I've been sitting here for a long time, and I need to tell you something before I close. I am not the same as I was when I sat down to share this. And I believe that if you were meant to hear this, you aren't either. I believe something moved tonight. I believe some of you received something that landed in a place that has been waiting for exactly this. And I need to ask you one last thing. Share this. Not for numbers. Not for any reason that has anything to do with me. Share it because you know